So in order to put a powerful presentation together, there are 9 key steps that I would recommend that you do most of the time. Now, there would be time when you skip some of these because maybe you do these types of presentations over and over, but we always want to have these 9 key steps in the back of our mind. So the first thing we are going to think about is, what's the subject matter? What am I here to talk about? What's the focus? So I could give a presentation on a financial business update, on a project update, or maybe I'm recommending a change within the business that could be seen as uncomfortable for some people. But whatever that subject matter is, I've got to focus on what is it that people are going to be listening to. Now, the second thing is the audience itself, knowing who's in the audience. So any cultural background data that I may well need. What's their current level of knowledge about the subject matter? So if I'm doing a presentation to taxi drivers in London, I might want to go very, very detailed because they know that inside out. But if I was giving a presentation to some tourists who've never been to London, I might need to just bring my level of data up a level. Otherwise, they might not understand me. I might want to consider what questions may they have, what objections may they have, what thoughts may they have. Are they a supporter of my message, or will they be challenged by my message? The audience analysis is absolutely vital for us to make sure that our presentation lands with credibility. The third thing we want to focus on is the outcome. Essentially, what is it that you want your audience to think, feel, say, and do? If you're in sales, or you're selling a physical product or a service, an outcome could be, I want to get a sale from this meeting. But if I'm doing a business update, it could be that I want people to carry on what they're doing, or I want them to work harder and more focused to meet the goals of this financial quarter or this financial year. Outcome, this third step, is the one that a lot of presentations don't always focus on, but it gives us a clue of how to end our presentation. What is it that you want the audience to do, having spent X amount of time listening to you? Once we know what the outcome is, we can then think about the content. So what information are we going to put into the presentation? Now, this is really important because we also need to factor in how long is the presentation. If I am doing a presentation for 10 minutes on the subject of London, and my outcome is, if you've never been to London, buy a ticket and come now, guess what? My content has to reflect my outcome. But I also recognize if I've only got 10 minutes, I can't give every reason why somebody should come to London. So I'd have to make sure that I focus on just certain key data that would fit within that time frame. If I've got a 3-hour presentation, that content would shift. But essentially the content of your message is, what will your message contain in order to back up your outcome to the audience about the subject matter that you're speaking about? Then we have to structure our message, and structure is really, really, really important. What you'll notice if you go to a restaurant and ask for a food menu and it's got 3 pages on it, page 1 will be the appetizer, page 2 will be the mains, and page 3 will be the desserts. It has structure. And how we structure a message can be the difference that makes the difference between the audience being able to understand exactly what we are saying. So structuring a message, remember, a message should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And a simple example of a structure is, break it into 3. Tell them what you're going to tell them it, and then tell them what you told them. But the middle bit, the main part of your presentation, you might want to structure that into 3 key areas. So if I was putting a presentation together about London, as well as having that key structure in place of tell them what you're going to tell them it, tell them what you told them, the middle part, I want to focus on breaking it into 3 key areas. So if my subject matter is on London and my outcome is I want people to visit London, I want to maybe put 3 buckets of data. So in bucket number 1, I might just talk about the history. In bucket number 2, I may well talk about the historical buildings. And then in bucket number 3, I may well talk about the monarchy, the Queen. Now, because I've only got 10 minutes, there's so much other stuff that I need to leave out. But if I put it all in there, it's a little bit like going to a restaurant and asking for the menu, ordering everything from the menu and trying to eat it. And it would be indigestible and wouldn't taste good at all. So learning how to structure your message is key. Then we need to think about presentation aids. Now I've got an example of presentation aids coming up later in these modules. But the key about presentation aids is keep it simple. An example of presentation aids is PowerPoint. That's what you're seeing on the screen at the moment. It's PowerPoint. But the key with PowerPoint is less is more. I've got some examples of putting PowerPoint slides together on a later module. The 7th step is rehearsal. Look to do rehearsals because what's in your mind and when it comes out of your mouth, it often needs a bit of practice. Whether you're a non-native English speaker or like me, you are an English speaker as your native language, you still need to rehearse. The more important the presentation, the more you rehearse. How do you do that? Let's take your smartphone and video yourself presenting. Notice how long it takes you. Notice whether any of the things you're trying to explain, you can't quite articulate it. You can't quite find the right words. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. And the more you rehearse, what you're building is muscle memory. And that will allow you to build confidence when you have the audience in front of you. Are you going to rehearse in every situation? No, because it would not need it. If you're trying to speak up in a project meeting, rehearsal isn't really going to be the right thing to do. But if you're doing a formal presentation, I can tell you now, the more you rehearse, the easier it gets. So then we go to step 8, which is deliver your presentation. This is when you stand up, you get the PowerPoint set up, you've got your visual aids, the audience are in the room, and you're now presenting. And the key to this is enjoy it. I'm going to show you techniques of presenting as we go through, but the key takeaway for you is to enjoy yourself. If you're not enjoying yourself, if you're looking too nervous, that comes across to the audience and it makes them feel anxious or nervous or bored themselves. So bring the best version of you, be authentically you at your best and enjoy that moment. So that's 8 steps. So step number 9, when we finished our presentation, it's a very simple one. Review how you did. Now, very, very often, if you're nervous, and I've done this when I've walked away from presentations, particularly in my early days of doing this, I would walk away and my mind would focus on one thing: what went wrong? And then I would say, everything went wrong. Now, I can tell you, everything never goes wrong. You may well have stumbled across a few sentences, a few words, maybe some of the technology didn't quite work, but everything didn't go wrong. So the first thing is consciously ask yourself, what did not work the way I wanted it to work? And make a note of that. I do this by writing it either on a piece of paper, in a notepad, or more recently into my iPhone in the notes section. The second thing I want to focus on is, based on those things that didn't go well, what would I do differently next time? So maybe I realized I wasn't as rehearsed. Therefore, next time I would rehearse more. Maybe PowerPoint didn't work the way I wanted it to. Maybe a video didn't play or the audio didn't work. Next time, I would do that differently. I would do checks beforehand. Maybe I was so nervous, I noticed that I was moving all over the place, which acts as a distractor. Next time, that's what I learned. What would I do differently next time is I would learn to stand still. Maybe I spent too much time looking at my notes and not enough time looking at the audience. Next time, I would spend time looking at the audience. So the first two things we can do is what didn't work and what would you do differently next time? But the third one, and this is the key, pay attention to the small things that you enjoyed. Pay attention to the things that did go right. Pay attention to the things that you feel you did do well. Even if the only thing that you can find was, I was nervous and I still stood up and I delivered, that for me is a key success. Because our brain is very good at spotting all of the negative stuff. And we have to consciously push our brain to start thinking, what are the things I did that were good, that added value? So write a list, even if you can do three things that I enjoyed about that presentation. And it could be that I made it to the end. Great, that was a win, because I've seen some people get halfway through and collapse. So a win was you made it to the end, you did it. That was a success. So it's not thinking of presentations in terms of failure or success. It's what didn't work, what would you do differently, and what did you enjoy, what did work for you. Now, on the rest of this whole program, we're going to be focusing on a couple of key things. So number one, we're going to focus on the delivery skills themselves. The delivery skill is absolutely vital, and that is where you're going to build your confidence from. And if you've got confidence but no skill, this is the equivalent of putting a traction control on that Ferrari and enabling you to be more confident, deliver with more clarity, and increase your credibility. If you don't have the skill, you're going to learn the techniques. So what do you do with your hands? How long should you look at somebody? When should you move? All of those things are going to be coming in the upcoming modules. So we're going to focus on part number 8, the actual delivery. But we're also going to build in, which is number 6, the presentation aids. As I mentioned a minute ago, I'm going to give you some techniques and I'm going to give you some examples of what your slides could be looking like and what you could do if they've had a bit of a makeover. So if you're using bullet points in your slides, what could you use instead? If you've got images in your slides, how can you make those images bigger, brighter, and better so they're more memorable? And what if you've got data? So if you've got graphs, if you've got spreadsheets, how can you pull the key data from those so when the audience sees the slides, they don't turn off? So all of those are coming up in the next few modules. The key to this module is to recognize we do need to know, if we've got the knowledge, we also need the skill and the confidence to speak up, not just in formal presentations, but also in meetings, in appraisals, in project updates, and even in interviews, and in social situations as well. All of these things are geared up to help you present your ideas with confidence, clarity, and credibility. So I look forward to welcoming you onto the next module.